I was in class and he was sitting to the row to the left of me, and I heard this higher pitched noise, and I looked to my left and he looked back at me and he's like, "Sorry, man, I have Tourette's." And my eyes got really big and I was like, "No way." And I was like, I have Tourette's too.
Hey, it's Ben. Hope everybody's had a good week. It's episode 12. I can't believe we've done a dozen episodes to date, but here we are, and looking at the stats, thousands and thousands of downloads of this podcast, meaning the word is out. So many levels of benefit to that. And I gotta say what I say every week. Thank you. So happy you've taken this up and brought it places that I never thought it would go. I'm still getting requests for interviews, and pretty soon I'm going to be setting those up. So if you're listening and you know that you've reached out to me about a future episode, we're going to get to that soon, the development of Season 2. One cool update is that I'm the guest on the latest episode of the Podcast Engineering Show, which is all about the production and technical side of what it takes to make a podcast like this. If you want to check that out, or if you're maybe interested in podcasting from a creator standpoint, go to podcastengineeringschool.com and click on the podcast link. And I'm episode 91. Thanks to the host, Chris Curran, for having me on. He's really high energy and he's just a lot of fun to talk to. So check that out if that's something you'd like to hear, or if you just want to peek behind the curtain of how a podcast like this is made. On this episode, we've got Jake. He's a college football player whose background with Tourette's is really interesting, from diagnosis to the point that a lot of us with Tourette's go through, where we make the decision or the decision is made for us about our peers knowing that we have Tourette's. That's not always easy, but there are some unique twists to the path that Jake was on, including a kind of support that doesn't always come around. And he's made the most of it by, for example, serving as a support for other kids with Tourette's. Interestingly, there's also a certain word that will trigger tics from Jake. There's a lot here, actually. Love this conversation. I won't delay it any longer. Here's our guest.
My name is Jacob Nichols. I am currently residing in Marquette, Michigan, and I go to Northern Michigan University, and I play football there.
What position do you play?
I'm a place kicker.
So, is football something that you entered when you were a little kid, or, how'd you get connected with that?
Yeah, I've been playing football since about first grade. And I kind of loved it ever since then. So I've just been continuing to work and I guess just get better at that.
Do you want to go pro, or is this just something to get you through college, or?
It'd be pretty cool to go pro. But, I'm just going to kind of go with the flow, and whatever happens, happens.
Well, what are you studying in college?
I'm currently studying marketing, and I'm going to take that to medical sales.
Oh, nice. How'd you pick that? Do you have like a family connection to that, or?
I really don't. I've been researching it for a couple of years, and it looks interesting, so I just kind of thought I'd pursue it.
I guess one of my sort of early curiosities is if, the Tourette's angle on it kind of created that bridge for you, and that, the interest in the medical field somehow.
No, not really. Because one of the things that I really want to be focused on, like selling, is pacemakers, and stuff like that. So
you said that you picked up football when you were about, 5 or 6, first grade. Had you been diagnosed yet at that point?
No, I was actually diagnosed in third grade, but I started having symptoms when I was about that age.
Yeah,
like I would start blinking. I'd kind of open my mouth pretty wide, and I'd breathe in irregularly.
Yeah,
so I'd be taking a really deep breath. I don't know, every 20 seconds.
I had a lot of the same symptoms starting out. Did the breathing thing mess with you in terms of playing football, or did you kind of get into a zone where Tourette's didn't really bother you?
It really didn't, which was actually really nice. But But like when I was playing, I wasn't really focused on the tics. I was more focused on not getting hit.
Yeah, overriding priorities.
Yeah.
Does football kind of represent a kind of therapy for you? Or a break from your tics, or do you kind of find like a haven away from your tics when you're playing?
Okay, so since I'm a place kicker, I'm only on the field for I'd say an average of 20 seconds.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So for that 20 seconds, I'm just really focused on, I guess, everything that I have to do with my process with kicking.
Yeah.
So the Tourette's go away when I'm kicking, and it's a brief moment, but it's a nice moment.
So what about when you were a kid? I mean, was it something that your teammates picked up on, or your coach, or how did?
Well, my dad was actually one of my coaches, so he didn't really notice it until actually it was one time after practice. I came home and I kept rolling my eyes, and he was like, "Why do you keep doing that?" And I just kind of told him, I have no idea, because I actually didn't. And that's when we went to go see a specialist about Tourette's. And at first they knew right away, I guess, what it was. Sure. Because I mean, I was young enough to, I guess, have the diagnosis right away. But I mean, they still have to wait a certain amount of time before they can actually diagnose you. Mm-hmm. So it was about, I don't know, 6 months after until we saw a specialist where I was actually diagnosed. So yeah, after about 6 months, I mean, that's when I was diagnosed.
So what happened from that point on? I mean, do you remember what the early conversations were like in terms of, managing tics, or was that a priority, medication, stuff like that?
I remember right after I was diagnosed, like in the doctor's room, my parents had me on a gluten-free diet. And we went to, I think it was Bush's, and got all this gluten-free food and stuff like that. And I was on the gluten-free diet for, I don't know, maybe less than a year. And it really didn't help. I mean, in some cases it could help some people, but for me, it didn't do anything for me.
Well, I mean, did gluten affect you in other ways?
Not that I know.
Okay.
Of.
So it was just kind of something to try to see if it would have a positive impact.
Yeah, the specialist actually recommended that I try it, because in some instances it has worked, but for me, I guess it just didn't.
Gotcha. Well, so I mean, the revelation to your parents. I mean, do you have any siblings?
I have an older sister.
Okay, so I mean, with just sort of like the family all together, was it comforting to know that there was a diagnosis, or was there sort of mystery involved with it of like, okay, we know he has Tourette's. What does this mean in the grand scheme? Do you remember some of these early conversations and questions about kind of how you were going to go through life? Or
I just remember my parents researching it a lot and kind of figuring out what the next steps were, like different medications, different treatments, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that was pretty much it. I mean, they weren't too worried, I don't think, at least, which was actually really nice for me, because I was kind of worried.
Do you remember specifically what you were worried about?
I guess I was just, at the time I was still really young, so I didn't really have a full grasp on it. But yeah. I got on my computer, and in my basement, the family computer, and I started to research it too. And I would find like videos and stuff like that. Yeah. And that's when I was like, okay, this could get a little ugly in the future.
Yeah, that's a good point, because obviously the portrayal of Tourette's, it's going to be more the extreme cases, and I say that with my heart going out to people who do have extreme cases, but that is sort of what is portrayed by media producers, and if they have the option to do that versus a mild case, then they will. But that also kind of creates this I think worry or fear among people, especially kids.
Especially with the internet access that some kids have these days. Yeah. And it's like, because they can just look online, research Tourette's, and a whole bunch of stuff pops up. A lot of it's misconstrued too. I mean,
of course, yeah. But do you remember what you watched and what the portrayal was?
I remember the first video that I watched. I can't really remember the name of it. But it was a video covering these kids in classrooms and stuff like that. And some of the kids were just making really loud noises with their vocal tics. And and some of them were screaming and stuff like that. And that's when I kind of realized okay, I don't really know what I'm going to do about this. But, wow. I eventually got over that, and I just kind of had to keep the positive mindset. Okay, it's most definitely going to get bad, but it really depends on how I handle it.
That's great that you were able to kind of, kind of show a sense of command over your Tourette's, just in terms of how you dealt with it and how you perceived it within yourself. But before you got to that point and seeing a video like that where kids are in class, and I mean, did that create a sense of maybe self-consciousness or paranoia when it came to you being at school and thinking or wondering what other kids are noticing about you?
Yes, definitely. But at the time of my diagnosis, I only had some motor tics.
Right.
So the vocals didn't start until about a year later.
Okay.
And they started off really bad, really bad. But it was difficult. But I went to a smaller school. I'd say there were maybe 10 to 12 kids in my class. So, I mean, I built up like a relationship with all those kids for the first 2 years, and they kind of understood, but they really didn't because they were mostly motor. And once when the vocals started in later third grade, people were kind of, I guess at first kind of iffy about it. But once when they like were continuous and stuff like that, I guess they just tried to tune them out as best as they could.
When I had Tourette's and when I was a little kid, it was kind of before a lot of the stigma set on and a lot of the pop culture pressure on Tourette's. But later on, when that kind of took effect, I bottled it up, and I didn't want people to, I just tried to hide it. And so were you kind of open about it? And if not, like when did you make the choice to be kind of open and tell people about Tourette's?
At first, I was very nervous about opening up about it. And I really tried to bottle it up too, because I was embarrassed about it, to be quite honest with you. And I guess it scared me to death to like think of me being, I guess, in a way different than these other kids. But I finally tried to start talking about it more, which is very difficult. But I guess the more you talk about it, the easier it is to like explain to people, I guess, what you're going through and what is happening. I guess.
Well, that's something I feel like I'm still working on for myself. So, I mean, you were pretty young when you got out in front of it.
I didn't really start fully talking about it until I want to say middle school.
Okay.
Because I was still in that smaller environment. So the kids already knew me. So I didn't really have a chance to explain it to a lot of different people.
Sure. Yeah.
But then I guess I started getting out more. I started I was playing football, and all of my football teammates, they kind of knew, but they didn't really get a full understanding of it either. I didn't really start getting in front of it until middle school.
But so those conversations, I mean, do you remember what the early impressions or responses were to that kind of thing? And were your teachers any different, or?
My teachers were actually really nice about it. But I mean, you're always going to get those kids who are kind of rude about it. Yeah. And there's really nothing you can do about that. I mean, if they don't want to be okay with who you are, then, there's no point in associating yourself with them anyways.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think with me, I was so concerned with what people thought of me, and were they going to think I'm some kind of weirdo because I have this thing, this disorder or disease, quote unquote, that they don't understand. I mean, this is a good conversation because this represents, one of two directions that you can kind of take it. There was mine where I just totally hid it away. And I was open about it when I was a little kid before I knew there was any reason to hide it away. Not that there is, but I mean, just in that context, there ended up being. And, when I'm going through middle school and high school, told nobody, didn't want anybody to know, didn't want anybody to think I was different or weird. I just wanted to be accepted into adulthood, and then just kind of like riding that routine into where I am today, where I'm just now maybe getting comfortable with sharing it with people who aren't necessarily very close to me. And trying to figure out kind of how to do that without it being awkward. And then you took the direction when you're pretty young of kind of owning it. And even if it's not easy, you got the difficulty of explaining it to people, trying to get them to understand and kind of weave that into your social life. Does it get easier for you as you're, growing up and meeting new people and relationships and all that. I mean, does it get any easier?
In 8th grade, I transferred schools to a different school that was closer to me. And when I first got there, I remember that it was extremely difficult to try and talk to people about it because no one really knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty difficult. But actually, a couple months into the school year, there was this kid who transferred in also, and he had Tourette's.
Huh.
So yeah, him and I both had our vocal tics, and we kind of got through that year together, which was actually, it was really nice.
That's great.
Because it was fantastic because I was having a really tough time with that. Because a lot of the teachers didn't know what was wrong with it either. I mean, they'd give me looks and stuff like that too. And I'd explain to them, hey, I have Tourette's. I can't help what I'm doing. And some of them just couldn't really understand that. And I don't know why, which is actually just awful. But, but yeah, no, that one of my friend with Tourette's, we kind of powered through that year together, and we would talk to some of the students. Some of the students would ask questions about it, and him and I would talk to them together, and we just kind of explain to them kind of what Tourette's is. And throughout the year, it got easier and easier as like most of the kids started to accept it, and most of the teachers started to accept it as well. And it went, I guess, pretty well. I can't really complain.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, how did you get to know this kid? Were you made aware of each other, or did you just kind of organically figure out that you had Tourette's?
I was in class, and he was sitting to the row to the left of me, and I heard this higher pitched noise, and I looked to my left, and he looked back at me, and he's like, sorry, man, I have Tourette's. And my eyes got really big, and I was like, no way. And I was like, I have Tourette's too.
Yeah.
And his eyes got big too. And I guess ever since then, we just clicked that year. So it was really nice.
Oh man, I'm jealous. I never had anything like that. I feel like something like that, this sort of, I mean, you kind of have a team at that point, and or a support system, or that would have, I think, done wonders for me when I was younger.
Oh yeah.
I did get to know another kid who had Tourette's, but this was something that was kind of arranged in a way through the Tourette Association and kind of through our parents. But, he lived in a different state. We were just kind of like pen pals trading baseball cards through the mail. I didn't have a kid sort of in my reach, so to speak, to kind of trade notes with. So, I mean, is that somebody you kept up with, or?
We kept up for, I'd say, maybe the first year through high school, but then he moved to Florida.
Yeah.
So, I guess we just kind of drifted apart. I haven't really talked to him in a while, but.
Yeah, it's funny. This kid I'm talking about, I still remember his name, still remember the town, his hometown and everything like that. I feel like I want to look him up and reconnect and just kind of see where things took him. Because it's literally been, I mean, this has to have been maybe 25 years ago or something like that. It was the last time we talked.
Oh, wow.
But so, how did these experiences when you're a kid with Tourette's and trying to make decisions on what's good for you, how did that impact the kind of adult you became? And that's kind of a huge question, but, how would you answer that?
In my 8th grade year, that kid, he really boosted my confidence because he was so open about it. If people asked me about it, I would tell them.
Yeah.
But he was so open and vibrant about it. Like it just didn't bother him at all. And that really gave me confidence, I guess, when dealing with it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And going into my freshman year of high school, I was struggling with it because my vocals and my motors actually got worse, I guess, because of the stress, maybe, when moving into a different high school, a bigger environment. And at first, I'd have to get up in front of each of my classes in high school, and I'd have to explain to the whole class that I had Tourette's. And I remember that was probably one of the most difficult things that I've had to do with my Tourette's.
Is that something that you did voluntarily, or did your teachers want you to do that, or?
My counselor actually had the idea of doing that. I guess I didn't really mind it. I mean, I did, but I probably would have rather had it come out more organically instead of forced like that. But I think that was probably the better decision, because right away, like from the first day of class, people knew that I had Tourette's, instead of like, I don't know, a couple days into the classes starting, people looking back, making comments and stuff like that, laughing.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it was nice to just kind of get it out of the way.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see the benefit of that, of, just basically saying, okay, look, here's the deal. But
Yeah.
yeah, at the same time, did you find that people treated you differently, or that you were special, or that they had to be careful around you, or what happened after that?
There was definitely, I guess I want to say tension,
Hmm.
between most of the students and me. Like no one would really want to talk to me because they didn't really know what my Tourette's were at the time, or like my individual
Right.
tics were. So they didn't know what I would do in a way. But I mean, after I explained to them all my classes and stuff like that, that really, really boosted my confidence. And that's when I started to be like actually more open about it. And I actually did a project on Tourette's, and I did a couple speeches on Tourette's in my high school career.
Huh.
And those went really well. And that really helped me to, I guess, completely own my Tourette's and just get a firm grasp on it.
That's great. So speeches, is that sort of in the context of like a classroom speech or something
Yeah,
else?
classroom speeches and stuff like that.
What kinds of projects?
I wrote a 5-paragraph essay on the history of Tourette's. And then I tried to write my research paper on Tourette's, but it wasn't one of the topics, so I couldn't. But I had to do a free speech in my English class my senior year, and I did it on a poem about Tourette's. And I remember like almost tearing up like halfway through the speech, and I'd had to like stop because I don't know why. I don't know what got over me, but
yeah.
I don't know. It was just, it felt nice, I guess. It just felt really good.
Just having experiences like that, I mean, to me, that tells me that you had something kind of planted in you that wanted to keep Tourette's awareness kind of at the forefront for you. I mean, is that true?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I even started a kind of Tourette support group at my high school. It never really took off, but I'd say I maybe talked to 3 or 4 kids about it, and kind of help them get through it, because they were starting off in high school and they were scared just like I was a freshman in high school. So I guess seeing me as a senior talking to the freshmen who didn't really know what to expect, and I would kind of tell them like, hey, people are going to be rude about it. But I would tell them that you just kind of have to own it at this point. I mean, it's going to be hard, but God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. So
oh man,
gotta get through it.
That's awesome. I mean, so you had multiple kids at your high school who dealt with Tourette's?
A couple of them came from the surrounding high schools in our area.
Okay, so it's kind of regional.
Yeah, and one of them was a freshman at our school, but his weren't really that bad. He had a couple motors, but that was pretty much it.
Yeah, but it's still, important to have that kind of support, because sometimes the only context you have is yourself. And if you're dealing with something that's kind of maybe sort of alien to greater, society or greater culture, it may be in the grand scheme a very mild or light case. But, if all you have is yourself as a frame of reference, and, you kind of wonder how you come off to other people in social situations. I mean, having a support group like that is, that could be huge. That could be enormous for that kid. That's amazing.
Thank you. Since when I got my scholarship or my preferred walk-on to Northern, one of my teammates I went to Detroit Catholic Central High School in Novi, Michigan. And one of my teammates' moms on that team was an elementary school teacher for a school in Brighton, Michigan. And she would talk to me, and she explained that one of her students actually had Tourette's. So she asked me if I would come in and talk to the student who had Tourette's and explain to his classmates about Tourette's. And I did that, and that was probably one of the coolest things I've done, because just educating his classroom and him and helping him out in his tough time was just really, really one of the better feelings that I've had with my Tourette's.
Oh man, that's amazing. I mean, so have you kept up with that kind of thing? I mean, you're busy with school, but just that sort of support net.
I still check. His name was Lucas. I still check in with him. I'm trying to get together with him over spring break and summer and stuff like that, just to kind of see how he's doing. But according to his mom, he's been doing fantastic, which is great to hear.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
So, do you attempt to manage your tics in any way, or is it the kind of thing where, whether it's through, some sort of rituals or medication or whatever, or is it something that you've just kind of learned to live with?
When I was younger, I was on so many different medications.
Yeah.
It was too much to bear. And I finally, in I think 7th grade, I just told my mom, I was like, I don't want to be on any more medication because I wasn't myself and I wasn't liking it. So, and they weren't really helping. They were just making me feel, I guess, like crap.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's the same here. I mean, I was on just this long string of meds, and the side effects were, I basically learned to like my Tourette's more than I like the side effects of the medication that controlled them. And I feel fortunate enough to where my Tourette's is, it's there and it's with me every day. But in the grand scheme, it's also, it's a mild case compared to other cases I've seen. But I feel fortunate in that regard that I can make that choice to just kind of manage it my own way, even though I think I've maybe done a negative job of bottling it up, and I need to be way more, open and honest about it with other people. But the medications, I mean, yeah, it was just something I couldn't negotiate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did not like it at all. So I just decided to just drop them all.
Yeah. What about, and again, if this is too personal, we can ditch this question and move on. But what about, relationships and things like that? I mean, does Tourette's come up and interfere with that in any way? Or, and again, if this is a weird question, we can totally move on from it.
No, it's not really a weird question because most of the relationships that I've had, the girls have been understanding about it, and it doesn't really seem to bother them. I'd say when I would first explain it to a girlfriend or a girl who I was talking to, they would kind of be like, oh, or not too thrilled about it. Like you could tell.
Yeah.
But eventually they'd kind of get over that. And believe it or not, I'd say most of the girls that I've dated have actually eventually found it to be kind of cute.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the thing that, at least with my fiance, I mean, she's arrived at that. She likes my tics, it's just something that occasionally, if I'm having a particularly, ticky moment, she'll kind of rib me a little bit, but it's completely playful. And, it's nothing where I feel like any pressure to where I have to withhold. And it's kind of funny because
awesome.
The funny part is a lot of the time I'll be ticking and completely unaware of it, and she'll kind of point it out to me. And then I become, aware at that point. But, I mean, do you have a pretty wide spectrum of tics or?
I used to, but as of right now, I'd say they're mainly motor. I kind of do this head nod thing. But at night, my vocals start to act up.
Right.
And with Tourette's, it waxes and wanes very
absolutely
differently. So tomorrow it could be the opposite. There really is no way of knowing. But for the past, I'd say since August, they've been mainly motor, which I don't really mind because especially in college with some of the larger lectures that I have, vocal tics would kind of be rough with that.
Right.
And with motors, it's kind of more quiet. Occasionally you'll get the kids who kind of point you out and be like, what is that kid doing or something like that. But I don't, that doesn't really bother me anymore. Like it used to really bother me, but now I just kind of smile and nod at them or something like that.
So, your ticks, I guess, kind of, you said wax and wane.
Uh-huh.
They've kind of changed over time, or kind of. I mean, the way my ticks, I have some ticks that I've had the entire time.
Hmm.
Some that pop up and are gone, within the same year. Some that kind of morph and evolve into bigger ticks or smaller ticks, or do you find that to be the same case with you? And I'll add to that, have you found the triggers to your ticks, assuming there are any?
Actually, yeah. One of my triggers is actually the word monkey, which is kind of weird.
So just
But
just
like,
just hearing that word,
yeah, every time I hear that word, it's just a vocal comes out. So
huh?
yeah, which is very strange because most of the time it's like an area on your body or something like that.
Yeah,
But if it's like touched or something like that, you'll tick. But like, for me, it's that word.
huh. I mean, have you tried to kind of do some self investigation to try to identify what may be the connection there?
Um, Not really. I mean,
I mean,
I
sometimes
guess
there's no
it's
connect. Sometimes there's no explaining it.
I I don't really know because I've actually I have thought about that, and I guess what my depiction of it being is like the I guess the uh in okay, so in the word monkey, it's there's more emphasis on the M and the O and the N.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of tells my brain to push it out in a way,
Huh. Okay.
which is kind of strange, but I haven't really cracked that code yet.
Yeah, and I hope you forgive me for asking about that, because I don't know if that's setting you off in any way. I
No, you're good.
just really curious about that kind of thing of whether it's because you said earlier with reference to school and kind of being in a new environment, and there's sort of like the anxiety and anxiousness, and that may kind of set things off. Is that another factor for you in your adult life?
um, Anxiety definitely plays a role in it. But I really just try to. I actually do a lot of yoga,
Mm-hmm.
and I've noticed that with doing yoga, it kind of drops my anxiety levels.
Huh.
And I've
Okay.
noticed, like, for tests and stuff like that, I guess with the yoga, like the breathing techniques and stuff like that, I guess it really just helps smooth my anxiety down,
Hmm.
which is actually really nice. Just because I don't tick as nearly as much as I used to, like before I started doing yoga and stuff like that.
Huh. Okay. So, have you found other outlets to kind of release, or at least something that just kind of like takes the edge off to where your Tourette's doesn't bother you as much?
Whenever I feel like a Tourette or a tick coming on, I immediately don't focus on that and I try to focus on something else, whether it's music in one ear,
Yeah.
which helps, because it really just takes your mind off the Tourette's and just makes you focus on, say, a lyric or something like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And that's been pretty influential in my tick experience so far.
Yeah. I mean, this is good stuff to hear. And is something that I'm trying to ask every single person I talk to is, how do they find that break? Even if it's never a permanent situation where you can, banish your tics or your Tourette's, but what just kind of gives you the satisfaction of kind of putting some space between yourself and your tics for just a little bit. And it's been a really, really cool variety of answers. Music definitely seems to be a common denominator with a lot of people. I think just because of I don't know, just the introspective nature of music, and
Hmm.
finding something rhythmic that you can focus on. I mean, my tics are definitely kind of rhythmic, and sometimes they kind of dovetail nicely into into my tics in a
Uh-huh.
way. But I mean, is there anything particular about music that seems to work for you?
Um, I like more of like a slower, I guess, tone in music.
Yeah.
Because that kind of slows everything down that I'm thinking of. Because my brain thinks about so many things at one time, and when I'm just kind of focusing on a slower song or something like that, it kind of slows that whole process in my brain down, so I can just focus on the melodies and stuff like that.
We've covered a lot of stuff. I mean, if there's anything that you think we or anybody listening should get out of this kind of conversation that you and I are having, what do you think that should be?
Um, the thing that helped me the most, I guess, growing up with Tourette's would probably just keep a positive mindset, no matter how difficult it's going to be, no matter how bad your day is going with your tics. Mm-hmm. Just always think that it's going to get better. I mean, there's 100% it will get better. So just getting through that individual day is difficult. Yeah. But if you keep that positive mindset and try to not let little glares or people saying stuff or just like the pain that you're feeling from the Tourette's, you just kind of have to tune that all out and just focus on yourself.
Well, Jake, man, it's really been a pleasure. I mean, it's important for me personally to have these conversations with other people because it kind of gives me a better frame of reference for, kind of where I am in the world and versus just kind of bottling it up and just kind of connecting with other people who have similar backgrounds as me. It's just really therapeutic for me to talk. So I appreciate your time in that regard.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
All right, thanks, Jake. Have a good night.
You too.
See ya.
Bye.
Oh, nice guy. That was awesome. Ended on a really high note. That was Jake Nichols in Marquette, Michigan, Northern Michigan University. Jake, you're amazing. Thank you. For everyone listening, if you want to weigh in or if you have any thoughts about this episode, any particular moment you identified with or anything, just email me, tourettespodcast@gmail.com, or find me on Twitter via the handle @TourettesPod. But I want to play your voice on this podcast, so I would love to receive your comment in the form of a voice memo. Just record it on your smartphone and email it to me. A lot of you might even have the easy ability to record your voice on your computer. However you want to do it is fine by me. Even if you just want to send me an email and keep it in confidence, that's totally okay, totally invited. I just appreciate hearing from you. What else? Tourette Syndrome Awareness Month is coming up. It would be cool if we could catapult this podcast even more during that time. Tourette Syndrome Awareness Month is May 15th through June 15th. Whatever you choose to do in support of Tourette awareness during that time period is good by me. You will find some good ideas to that end at tourette.org/awareness month. You might be wondering what the TAA Thunderclap is. Well, head to that link for the answer. There's a lot going on, and I plan to participate fully. Again, tourette.org/awareness month. Thanks, everyone, for your emails, retweets, and messages. Please keep them coming. Email me anytime. Past episodes at tourettespodcast.libsyn.com. Libsyn is spelled Libsyn. You can also find the podcast on iTunes and really all the podcasting apps, though some I think might be missing some episodes, and I'm investigating that. But it looks like we're also on Spotify now. If you're listening on Spotify, let me know. I'd love to hear whether it all looks good over there and if all the episodes got brought in, starting from episode 0 to episode 12 being this one. So really 13 episodes is where we are. And we've got more ahead. We'll talk in the meantime, and we'll have a new episode next Friday. Thanks for listening. This is Ben.